Hello out there. I'm the oldest nerd. It's time once again to talk movies with Professor O. And Professor O joins us from his study in Oklahoma, not far from Tulsa, me in Texas, not far from Houston. As we record this, there's some bad weather out there, but it is moving to the north and east of us, and our sympathies to those in Louisiana and Mississippi who may be having some effects of what's right now a tropical depression. It's probably not going to be much more. We hope that stays that way.
Amen.
Nevertheless, I think that our big challenge in talking about Ant-Man this week is tying it in with Gilligan's Island. I'm going to have a problem doing this.
It is great that you bring that up because I gotta admit I have been on a Mannix quest, and the this does still working my way back to Ant Man. I don't think we're gonna get there, and I noticed in an episode there were two actresses from Star Trek from that were on Mannix,
Yeah,
because Mannix was connected to Desilu, and there's so many actors between Mission Impossible, actors and props between
yeah.
Mission Impossible and Mannix, and so these two actors are there, and they had both studied at the Don Wells, or else worked with Don, but Don Wells set up a school for guerrilla style acting.
Wow.
Instant
You've done
acting.
it. You've found a way to link this film with Gilligan's Island. I'm proud of you.
Because I've been watching Mannix. I'm still working on the clear. Now I got to connect Mannix to Ant-Man.
Oh, help us if we if we
Yes.
get talking about Mannix. I do want to point out that Evangeline Lilly is here in this film, and she wasn't the original person what they wanted to cast for this, but I think that she's so well done for it because she does well an action type of acting. She was in Lost, and there was a lot of physicality to her role there, and as it is here.
Oh, absolutely. They trained her in a specific style of fighting, and man, she learned that stuff well. And
Yeah.
apparently Paul Rudd was good grief.
Well, they had to
Uh,
redo the suit for him, didn't they? Because they fitted him for the suit, and then he went and started working out because he thought, well, to be a superhero, you got to be muscular, and so he came back, and the suit wouldn't fit. So they
yeah,
had to loosen the some areas of the suit so it would show off his newly gained
physique.
musculature.
Yeah,
Yeah,
musculature. I mean, he got ripped.
yeah,
Five months of working out, and then learned how to do the what's it called, parkour, where you can jump over
yeah,
fences and stuff like that. I mean, that was yeah. The behind the scenes work by the actors was fantastic to
yeah.
to get ready for the parts.
And of course, we can't ignore, of course, Michael Michael Douglas,
Douglas.
and
Oh,
I love him in everything that he's in, honestly. And it was odd. I read that they had considered Alan Tudyk for his role, and I thought I like Alan Tudyk as well, but I don't think that he could play the elder person
what?
that
No.
Douglas did in this. I mean, they'd have to redo that whole thing, I think. But I thought he
Yeah.
was perfect for this, and of course he's great at deadpanning a lot of the funny lines that are in this film. And this film, I'm not even going to go over any of the quotes on this film because just about all of it is funny lines that don't need to be given away if you haven't seen the film recently.
That's a great point. He's got some great lines. Michael Douglas was perfect for the part, and
Yeah.
I will admit the de-aging technology, which I wasn't necessarily, and this is probably early de-aging technology
Yeah.
in use in
Yeah.
film.
This is what, 2015. So yeah, it's,
Right. Yeah. 20. Yeah, exactly. So one of the first instances I can remember. I mean, that's, I guess, Rogue One probably came out around the same time, and they had used some de-aging technology for in Rogue One. I'm trying to remember who it was for.
it
But
was, I think it was for, oh goodness, big actor who played Governor Tarkin in Star Wars.
Absolutely. And who, yeah, we'll get it. Great British actor. worked in
Yeah.
all the vampire films with
Yeah, he did. I'll get it.
Christopher
I'll get
Lee.
it in about 4 hours. We'll be back.
Yeah. Christopher Lee
No, it
was
wasn't.
the
It
vamp.
wasn't Christopher Lee.
Yeah, he was the vampire, and the vampire hunter was Cushing, Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing. You're right.
Peter Cushing,
Absolutely.
Governor
You
Tarkin.
got it
His
before I could look it up. I was looking it up,
well, it was
it just now came up. So
it is what the so yeah, I think they used that de-aging technology there,
yeah.
and this was I thought fantastic. Um, yeah, and yeah, and I was thinking of yeah, Alan Tudyk. They'd have to make him look old. I thought it was better looking making Michael Douglas look just a little bit look younger, and it
Well,
worked.
they
And it
certainly had plenty of material to go for. He's made a lot of films, and he said that after doing this, he wanted to make a prequel to Romancing the Stone. So
that is incredible. That's the earliest I can remember him, and I think it was in the China Syndrome.
yeah.
Uh, and this,
Well, he was in the
he,
Streets of San Francisco, if you remember that.
oh my
Yeah,
goodness,
he was the lead in Streets of San Francisco.
that's right, that's right. Speaking of good, hey, we're working our way to Gilligan's Island there.
We are.
We're getting really close now. Remember when Carl Malden was in the guest star? No, I'm kidding. I don't think Carl Malden
No.
ever made it to the streets of Gilligan's Island. But anyway,
We'll see if Kirk Douglas did.
yeah, we're getting there. But he was perfect for the part, and I love those scenes. It's Marvel. I always think of when I had a couple classes teaching about the MCU, and in fact is Professor M from a broadcasting institution that we both
Yes.
have worked for.
Yeah.
It helped me on in the Marvel Universe class, and where was I going with that? But the idea of the people that read the comic books. Whenever I do Marvel, I'm always in awe of they're so authentic. I mean, I've done pretty well. I've watched almost all the movies, done some backstory for the films, read some really good kind of academic books that kind of connect that worked on that to bring that to the films. But the people that have read the comic books, I just am in awe of, and
Yeah.
so I thought I thought this did a pretty good job of referencing Hank Pym and going back into Pym Industries and basically the particle and going
They didn't
back
waste
into
too much time in giving the backstory, though. They did that pretty quickly.
They did that pretty quickly. In a deleted scene, it goes a little bit deeper with that,
Yeah.
and that's the one deleted scene. One deleted scene, we'll get to them, but one deleted scene, I could see it was an entire. I mean, I'll go off sideways for a second with deleted scenes. One of them, basically, it's funny. Kirk Douglas is Michael Douglas is or not Kirk, but is orchestrating. It's his first kind of invitation to check out Scott Lang. And so basically, it's Scott Lang thinks the guys think that they are location scouting out the big mansion. But of course, we all know in the end of the day, it's being orchestrated by Pym, by Michael
Yeah.
Douglas being orchestrated. And so the first way was they should come in as cable guys and replace and so Michael Douglas plays a really old cranky guy whose TV is out, analog cable is out. And so the guys come in to fix that, and they drop in a camera inside the DVD player, some sort of camera that they could.
Yeah.
And the whole sequence, 5 minutes long, was deleted, and I get that because that messes with the pace. But
Yeah.
the one scene that was really good was you see this scene a little bit in the film, but it's when Hank Pym is talking about his work with Shield, even fighting Hydra in the 50s in the Cold War as
Right.
Ant-Man. And that being expanded was kind of cool because
That kind of links with the comic books. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you
So-
read the comic books?
I did not, and most people didn't, which is why these films are so successful. I've thought about this a lot, that the Marvel films have done so well, mostly until recently, and the DC films have always fallen flat, is because everybody read DC. I read Superman and Batman and the Green Lantern and various others that were there, but it never really. Uh, I think I saw Plastic Man out of Marvel, which they haven't done anything on.
Right.
But it wasn't. Marvel really wasn't the lead comic. And so what they did when they started making these movies, you might have some idea by seeing them in the racks or something like that that there was an Iron Man and there was other things, but they were able to build the whole story up and elevate that. And I think that was that's how Marvel caught on. And then you see Batman or Superman movie, you say, well, Superman can't do that, or this isn't the way I remember it, or and then there were other, Batman and Superman went all the way back to movie serials and radio shows. So I mean, you didn't have, it was way too familiar, I think, and this always seemed a lot fresher. And
Right.
Ant-Man has been there for a long time, but probably most people hadn't heard of him when it came up as a movie.
Yeah, just it gives you this creative palette that you're vaguely familiar with, but they can really be creative with it and
Yes.
touch your memories just enough, but yet you're not thinking like you just mentioned. You're hey, he couldn't do that. He didn't look like that. Instead, it's they had just enough to work with to really then get creative with it. And oh, they've done a marvelous job. You're right. I think we all hit a certain, even though they were doing an incredible job. I mean, we were exhausted in a sense by the end of I mean the penultimate movie. Oh, good grief, Infinity
Yeah.
War. You know what?
Yeah, Infinity War. Yeah.
Right, and they were exhausted. We were exhausted. How do you go on from there? I mean, it's incredible. And what a successful conclusion to the movies, and then they've got to keep on going, and they've done a pretty good job of doing it. But I need to, yeah, I've kind of dropped off a little bit. Need to actually seeing. I love the character, that the MCU character that he interacts with in this film, and that was kind of the character, the Falcon, with the kind of the main character. He can't see me, I can see you. That was a great
Yeah.
part of the film. That the the I love that interaction, and that character is so good, the Falcon, and the conclusion of Infinity War with him taking up the mantle as being Captain America was just perfect.
I
And I mean,
think another thing. I think another thing that should be talked about here is the fact that this is the case in a lot of the Marvel characters. And certainly it is shown here that there are shades of gray of these characters. Superman is truth,
right,
justice, the American way, and won't be caught being mean to anybody. And these characters, I mean, we have our Ant-Man is basically a criminal who
yeah,
is going to try to redeem himself, maybe, or maybe not. And you have the same thing with Deadpool, who said in the beginning of the movie, "I'm no hero. I'm just I do this,"
that's
and
the
and
extreme end of
and
the gray. Yeah,
and just about everybody. There's not a whole lot of nobility there. I mean, you go all the way
yeah,
back to Iron Man, who was a little less money grubbing than his father was, and his father's business partner, but was doing this halfway out of ego, and
after the
you didn't
ego,
see
and then
this.
battle,
You never
yeah,
saw
and
this out of
battling
the
the
DC
ends
people, and so
justifying
I
the
think it
means.
makes more interesting characters.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. Way more interesting characters. Relatability instead of nobility. You got you really can relate to them more. And it's interesting. Scott Lang apparently in there was a really good article in this guy McSweeney has done a good job of picking apart the Avengers and Marvel, and he pointed out that it's in the that Scott Lang's character is actually less noble than in they had kind of designed him, and Rudd kind of liked the original conception of the character, which was more shades of gray, and
Yeah.
apparently he not only when he had stolen necklaces, and I mean, he was basically kind of a cat burglar. And you know, and in the big $4 million heist, there was still he definitely took a fee. He took his fee for
Yeah,
restoring those $4 million that had been stolen from their customers, and I think his fee might have been pretty good
it might have
as a
been.
part of the cut. Yeah, and that comes out in not deleted scenes, but they had news coverage from the there's a Marvel comics in the movies. They always use the same news station,
Yeah.
kind of news network to report the news, and so they had a special kind of like it was somewhere between Entertainment Tonight and like a little harder hitting entertainment news, but they do an interview with Scott Lang from prison, and she wants him to admit, oh, you're more of a thief than you want to admit. You're not so much Robin Hood. You've got some thievery in there.
Yeah.
But
But you touch upon here too the original script that was we had picked this film because of the connection with the director. The original director was supposed to be Edgar Wright, and
right,
he and Joe Cornish wrote most of the script. And one of the things he wanted to do was to make it his own. He said, "I've never directed a film that I haven't written." He had just, they in fact delayed the beginning of the development of this film while World's End was still being filmed, which he had directed, of course. World's End, which we've reviewed before.
our trilogy, yeah,
Our trilogy. And he left when Marvel came back and said, well, we want to put more Avengers in this. We want to link it more with the other Marvel Universe stuff. And we want to get somebody else to write in some stuff for it. And Wright would have nothing of it. He said, I'm not a hired director. I direct my own stuff, and I wrote this, and I like how it turned out. And in fact, the director they replaced him with, Peyton Reed, liked a lot of his stuff, but he allowed Adam McKay and Paul Rudd himself to write extra material that they used. But the majority of the script that was shot was still Edgar Wright's.
Edgar Wright, yeah.
But you can tell where it isn't, where they start bringing in the other parts of the Marvel universe into the story, and some of the dialogue that Scott has is pretty much written by Paul Rudd.
Wow, that he written by him, because he adds a great tone and sense of humor to the
Yes.
project. And yeah, you're right. Bringing in the Falcon was definitely part of the Marvelization of the film, but yeah, you're right about it. Apparently, Marvel, you've got to work, even if you are a director who has a sense of being an auteur, an author, and you've got a lot of style that's your own. There's a certain amount you got to conform to within the Marvel confines. And Edgar Wright, yeah, had trouble.
It just wasn't his experience. He's made kind of indie films, and this is a big budget, big studio kind of thing,
right?
Marvel Studios, but really Disney. And when you come to this, that's the other thing. They had a huge budget, $130 million for this. It made $519 million worldwide. It is the highest grossing picture that Michael Douglas has ever been in, which is interesting for all the films he's been in. I mean, you can list some of his big films easily, and surprisingly, this is the big one. So Marvel kind of knew what they were doing, what they wanted to do, but I think the difficulty there was that Wright wanted to make a little film.
Right, make us that's a good point. I would love to see both. I think it ended up with Wright, and thank goodness they gave him credit for this on the screenplay, whole 9 yards, when you're watching the beginning of the titles, but or I guess no, it's the end titles. His name probably pops up more, but so his contributions, I think, were fantastic. but
Yes.
but I would enjoy his version of this too. I think both could be great. This one totally fits in the MCU, but Edgar Wright's so creative. I wouldn't. I would enjoy seeing. And if he could have worked in Simon Pegg, that
Yeah.
would have been
But
and some of those.
and it was Wright that hired Michael Douglas. So I mean not Michael Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd.
That's brilliant of him to do that. That was
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, he's
But
fantastic.
Peyton Reed did a good job with this because I mean they've had him do both sequels to this film.
Wow, that is van. Yeah, there was another writer we talked about, Scott Bucatan, and I hope I'm not butchering his name. That really he loves the fact that he had written apparently an essay that I hate superhero movies, but then he keeps watching them because he's a fan,
Of
and
course.
he decided that this was his favorite, one of his favorite. Well, actually, he likes Ant Man and the Wasp a little bit better than
Yeah.
Ant Man. I kind of view them as about equal. I just think Ant Man at the time when it came in the MCU universe it was just the perfect time. It was the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
It was a perfect time in the MCU universe. MC for and what he loves about the film is that it's a comedy, and that
Yeah.
instead of and it really almost out and out a comedy instead of taking itself so seriously that he makes it does some really good wordplay. He said some of the MCU films have so much gravitas that I mean and I've enjoyed some of those films, but he said it's time for some levitas, and this film certainly provides you with. It's got such a good sense of humor. And I had some good quotes. I'm gonna see if I can find them real quick from
I'll
the.
give you one while you're looking for that.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Where
absolutely.
Hank from the trailer, Hank Pym says, "Scott, I need you to be the Ant Man." He says, "One question: Is it too late to change the name?"
Yeah, because apparently, the Ant Man, and this would be going back to the friends we have on this on the podcast that hopefully were that probably read the MCU when I should have been reading it. The that apparently Ant Man, that kind of a running joke even in the comics, that it's like your superheroes what Ant
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's change the name. But one thing this Scott Buchatman does, and I like that he brings up how similar this film is in some respects. It's kind of like the a cousin of the Incredible Shrinking Man, which
Yeah.
was an amazing film. But he points out that this keeps the comedy, and the Incredible Shrinking Man certainly does not. It's more of
No,
a
it was it
tragedy.
was it was very solemn, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, and as they're both named Scott, and as Scott, when he shrinks in the Incredible Shrinking Man, he becomes more petulant when he's become, and who could blame him? He's the size of a 5-year-old, and his clothes are all outsized, and all he can see is just continual shrinkage. But it's when they reach the end that they kind of are the same kind of character. I think the famous line at the end of the Incredible Shrinking Man is as he's shrinking into basically the size that Scott Lang did when he almost couldn't come back. He's going
Yeah.
into that quantum universe,
Yeah.
and when the Incredible Shrinking Man reaches that infinitesimal size, he says in the mind, he says, "I still am here because in the mind of God there is no zero," and so he counts, and
Yeah.
so and what's interesting is somehow Scott Lang has got to still maintain that sense of identity, and of course he's helped out of it with his daughter calling his name to help bring him back. But I
Yeah.
thought that was an interesting comparison. The other thing he brings up is that Paul Rudd, with his comedy and the way this film is written, it's like Buster Keaton. There's Buster Keaton like moments,
Yeah.
which is kind of, you got the train, and
Yeah.
and Buster Keaton, apparently when you look at those silent films, he comes out at a time where we're learning to deal with technology. American workers in the 20s. I mean, they're fully, it's the steam age, it's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
industrial age, it's electricity. And we're learning to deal with Charlie Chaplin does that 100% in modern times. Has to become one with that technology. And
right.
and so and so Buster Keaton, and so he kind of brings that to our version of technology in that Scott Lang has to deal with the digital technology, the new
Right.
digital age, and he kind of uses it's our appreciation of special effects, how we can assimilate all these special effects. And he feels like that in Ant-Man we're much more comfortable with the special effects. They just work better. Then they've hit an age where they work better. The film allows them to work better than maybe even Iron Man or certainly earlier films. But
Yeah, well, in this case, at least Ant-Man was they only had to CG the faceplate on his helmet,
oh, good
and the
point.
rest of it was
Right,
practical. I mean, for the Wasp, they couldn't do that practical. They did it by motion control, a motion suit and CG. But the Ant-Man himself was pretty much in a practical suit, and that helped for all the action sequences in there because I mean it cost a lot of money already to do CG. And
right,
imagine the amount of movement you have to do. It's like how many frames of animation are you going to do to make this look realistic?
right.
And then how are you going to do that? And of course they use the motion control suits and things like that so they can get an idea how people move and stuff like that. But it still doesn't look quite real in all but the most sophisticated CG.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And Paul Rudd's stunt guy was unreal.
Yeah,
They had and they had the special effect. They showed him with the motion control with the motion control suits and all the stunts he had to do were absolutely crazy. He had wires and basically it's just his body against a green screen, but the way he made his body move was incredible.
yeah.
That yeah, and that just worked. But yeah, it mentioned and the other thing this author was saying, and sometimes these authors can kind of overdo, perhaps what maybe exaggerating our fears. Like you can see the Matrix kind of dealing with a fear of technology. Matrix comes out in 1999, Y2K
Right.
is right around the corner, and so fear of technology would be a big thing. And the special effects can even reflect those fears. He feels like here 15 years later that it's a comedy now and the special effects have become much more integrated with the effects and the human body and we're just more comfortable with the whole process.
Hmm. That
And
could have a lot to do with it.
yeah,
Do,
yeah.
do you find that this film is a little bit hard to review because it is so heavy in action, heavy in comedy, and kind of thin in plot? It's a heist movie, but beyond that, it's just we got to go in, steal something, get it, meet the bad guy, fight with the bad guy, hopefully kill the bad guy, but the bad guy gets away, and then settle some social things between daughters of the two main characters.
Yeah, that's a good summation of the plot. I mean, that's exactly what happens. And I think it's funny, films like that, you're looking, I know you do the same thing. You're going, okay, what is going to make this film? What's going to give the twist to this film to give it enough beef, enough meat to where or enough thinking matter to where you can say, that was an interesting subplot, or I didn't see that coming. And I think for me, it's exactly as you described. I think it's going into the backstory with Hank Pym and the connection to Shield that just and the Cold War and maybe the idea that this technology he just feels like it's kind of unusual for the Marvel. Maybe it's not that you can see it somewhere, but not all the places in the Marvel universe that Hank Pym just feels like this technology is so dangerous it should not be used. Only I should use this technology, and I'm not going to give it to Shield, and I'm certainly not going to give it to the protege.
Or to
You know,
Hydra.
yeah, or Hydra, and that was an interesting twist. They could have played that out a little bit, because I didn't
Well,
see
that
that
was
coming.
for a future film because, of course, Hydra does get its hands on that technology because the oh, what was his name? That was the Nemesis, the former um,
Oh
Darren
yes,
Cross. Darren Cross
right.
did not die, but went ahead and gave the technology he had that was used later by Hydra
But by
in
Hydra,
another film.
and what's fascinating, and that this is during the time, of course, that Agents of Shield is ramping up. The TV show is ramping up, and so I
Yeah,
did like the mentions and the connections between the. That was fun too. The connections between the TV show and the film. But yeah, and then Hydra pops up. So yeah, there was just enough of that stuff to add a little more layers to the plot. Other than that, it needed all those things. Other than that, would have been just a little too simple, and you're just kind of relying on the special effects and comedy, good comedy. I mean, the guys working with him were fantastic. The van, the van, the sound effect for the horn with the van, all that stuff really worked well. That made for a nice group of character actors. Michael Pena was fantastic. Tip Harris, Tip Tia, and of course it was great to see Anthony Mackie again.
yeah.
But good, yeah. All the and well, there's the Anthony Mackie that actually, I think, added some to the whole thing too. But yeah, it was just enough of that stuff to add that extra dimension that you're looking for in a film.
So, despite the fact that our favored director here was not really correct as far as how the film, and you say you want to see how the film would have come out if they had done his cut of it,
Yeah,
his original idea. But if Wright had been the director in all of this, there would not have been the tie-in with Falcon and with the other issues of the Marvel universe, and I think it actually helped here. Otherwise, it might have been. I'm not certain less of a story, but certainly it would not had the same level of sizzle.
yeah, a good point. And yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, and this reaching this level of sizzle helps, and that helps it fits into the MCU too. And I thought the perfect character to interact with. That was fun. So yeah, that was yeah, it really worked out well. What was your favorite special effect of the film? Do you have was there uh
Oh, when all the ants went into the computers, that was kind of fun.
that was a ton of fun.
Yeah,
God, reminiscent of Tron.
yeah, yeah, kind
Yeah,
of.
it's good. The Thomas the Tank Engine. I think the end of the Thomas the Tank Engine thing, where it's so threatening and menacing, and this got to admit that yeah, this is from the article I was reading by Scott.
Yeah, there was a story that they were worried about how they would use Thomas the Tank Engine, and they insisted that he would have to have the same cars on the usual thing, would always have to have a smile on his face, and wasn't part of the actual conflict. And they did that pretty well, and the people that owned the Thomas rights were happy with how it all
We're
came out.
happy. The in terms of there was a good in this Scott Bukataman in I hope I'm not massacring his name,
You're
but
massacring everything else, but not that.
yeah, but not that. It's so easy. the he pointed out that that for small miniature for effects like this to make miniatures working with miniatures, and we started out working with miniatures with those big where they could use big boats in the John Wayne film
Yeah,
about Pearl
yeah,
Harbor.
right.
And but filming in slow motion is key. To when you're using miniatures, if you film them at normal speed, and this guy uses as his contrast to show, look what can happen when you use normal speed. He points out that what's in Logan's Run, when we see from 1977 or 76, when we
Mm-hmm.
see a wide angle of the city, I guess it's kind of, the underground city with the trams that are going across. They filmed that at normal motion. They did not slow that down. And just when he mentioned that, and in my mind's eye, I can see that effect. That does not look great. It needed
Yeah.
slow motion. It looks like a model with a train on it, and that's what's so funny about the Thomas the Tank Engine stuff. When they're and they kind of they make it more slower motion because it's all dramatic, and you got Ant-Man and they're fighting, and the train with a smile on his face is gigantic. But then when it goes off the track and we cut back to a a regular shot as if we were in the room and couldn't see Scott, and the train is small, they stop the slow motion and it just clunks off the track like a train,
Yeah.
and it's perfect. It's the opposite of Logan's Run. It's absolutely perfect. I thought that was hilarious, and I love the
Yeah.
tank. The tank coming through the building was fantastic too.
Yeah. Well, didn't ILM do the special effects on this? Am I right on this?
I believe you're right. I believe, yeah, that's a good question. I The special effects director, that the tank coming through the building, they decided to do that with a full size tank with a model,
Uh-huh.
and because they wanted all the debris, everything, cameras kind of low and looking up at the tank as it bursts through. I think, in the
Yeah.
film, it looks like the tank is maybe 3 or 4 stories up. When they shot it, it was just like maybe 20 feet high, 2 stories up when the tank burst through. But it was a full size tank model that comes through, and it looks fantastic. It was kind of interesting. The tank had a ton of green screen on the sides of the tank and all around the tank, but they still, so they can make the tank look more like a keychain as the full size tank bursts through the building. But
Right.
it all works. I mean, the full size effect works because it rips through the side of that building, and it really looks like,
Now I heard they edited out the scene that established the tank early in the film. It slowed it down too much, so they decided not to use it.
That's exactly right. It's a short scene. Yeah, he just picks up the keychain, and so and so in the film, you're almost kind of thinking, where did this come from? You see the tank
Yeah.
I feel like you see the tank in a previous scene a tiny bit, but yeah, they took out that, and they still didn't, even in the deleted scene, they don't give it away very much. You don't know how the tank's going to be fully used.
It was Chekhov's gun, but they decided just not to do that.
That's a great point. Cut back Chekhov's gun. You can't do that too much.
It's
That's a
true.
great point.
That's true. And
The
I'm still looking through all of the credits here, and I do not see
yeah,
ILM being mentioned, but I seems like I heard somewhere that they were involved in the special effects here because they were very good.
yeah. Here's the way. While you're looking at this, yeah, Scott Bacottoman. Well,
Yeah.
he writes that the final battle in the earlier Ant-Man took place in a child's play table. A thundering, roaring Thomas the Tank Engine derails and crashes in cinematically spectacular fashion. But a cut to a long shot shows us nothing more than a toy train tipping over with no more mass force and momentum than one would expect. It just falls over, clunk. And I got a kick out of that. The where you mentions the let's see, well, shoot, I lost the track where he mentions Logan's Run, yeah, the way he described it, yeah, it just doesn't work in Logan's Run when you get away from the slow motion. Um, he does mention, it says the growing and shrinking of cars and the lab. Now this is in Ant-Man and the Wasp Woman. Makes
Mhm.
no sense. How does the laboratory have electricity and plumbing, even granting the giant Duracells? How rapidly would which would just how rapidly would the wheels of a toy car need to spin to match the speed of a real car? Questions of plausibility can be asked of many a movie, but in the Ant-Man series, we're quite happy not to make sense and to indulge and just enjoy it for its fondness for irrational spaces and beings. All the play and size probability is also reminiscent of the mutability of space made by the new technologies and special
Yeah.
effects.
Yeah, I was right about ILM.
Oh,
They
wow.
did
Okay, gotcha.
they did most of the special effects. There were three other effects houses they hired for this as well. It was obviously a very complicated special effects mix there, so they subcontracted some of those things.
Well, and we always, that's one thing. We started out our series talking about, like in Tron or in the Andromeda Strain. Yeah, how do you make these future without having digital technology, digital effects?
Yeah.
How yeah, how do you do this? and and it gets a little harder to describe as computers, as computers take over and computer animation takes over. It's a little hard to describe the process to get into the weeds of it. But for this one, they apparently they used a, and I may be wrong on this, but in watching the effects in the features for this, it felt like they definitely used miniature cameras as much as they could, tiny little cameras that could actually go into a rug or the between floors to
Yeah.
between in an apartment to look at all the different textures that you're going to look at as you go between floors, or the fibers of a carpet that are in a
Yeah.
rug. And in doing that, tell me if I'm wrong. I drew an illustration here. Let's see if it'll show up. So I don't think it's going to show. Yeah, right here.
I see a
Okay.
happy face. That's all I can tell.
That's the Thomas the Tank engine.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
right. Yeah, that's Thomas over there. But on this side, here is Scott. And there's Scott. And they made a model of him that's about like 5/8 of an inch high.
Yeah.
And then they what they filmed was this is carpet. This is like the fibers of a carpet
Right.
that's
Right.
standing up. And I was never sure if they actually made a model of carpet that was this size, because these fibers would be, teeny tiny, the size of a carpet. But
Sure.
here they've expanded them to about an inch, well, kind of like, the old 70s carpets
Right.
where you
That cut
wade
pile
through.
carpet they used to use in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, like what'd you say again?
The old cut pile carpet they used to use in the 70s a lot.
Exactly. And when they made it that big, and of course they would have to, their special effects model making teams would have to do that, but that allowed them to really let us see the fibers of this carpet. And of course, the ants going through the carpet. Back to the ants were incredible,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the
They will.
going through and apparently some people have, but apparently they used that. Yeah, they did use a model of Scott like that big, and I was wondering if they used that model to then make their effects like, okay, it can't be the carpet can't be just real size. We got to make it a little bit bigger to then explore it with our
Yeah.
tiny camera. So that was God. But I love practical stuff, and it sounds like between the tank and that was some practical stuff. Any other practical stuff that you can think of that?
It's hard to tell what was practical and what wasn't these days. I mean, with
Exactly.
the way that digital CG is so good, and I'm
True.
looking over the special effects, and they really don't have much in building stuff. ILM is good about doing practical effects. They will do models and things like that. We don't see a lot of that. The only thing that I know of that is practical in this are, like the building near the end, and of course the
Right.
Ant-Man suit. But much of the
That's
rest
true.
was CG or background artistry.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if if they actually made this this size model of a carpet and then stick a little miniature camera through it to then take that information. I think then they probably took
They
that
might have used
information.
it certainly to get the idea how to do the artwork.
Exactly, and then it goes to the computers.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly. I think that's kind of what happened with that. The
yeah.
the bathtub scene, they did have the between they had Paul Rudd and his stunt double. I should know his name. He's incredible, but in the bodysuit, in the sensor suit, and they had just basically that's a giant green screen set with it looks like where a water slide, basically,
Yeah.
how you'd slide down to give the impression of if sliding along the bathtub. But no. And I was hoping, I don't think they did this, the little ant that's under the table that the daughter interacts with. I was hoping that would actually be that they would have actually used practical effects for that, some moving parts,
Yeah.
kind of like ET a little bit. But I think that was a completely on this when I rewatched that scene. I think it's a completely digital ant.
Yeah. And Yeah, I imagine the amount of money that it costs already $130 million to make the picture, that they probably didn't want to spend too much money on practical effects because they were spending so much money already on
On
digital
digital.
effects.
Yeah,
So
the
that
way
occurs to me. I want to say
that's a
something about the
yeah,
required cameo by. I mean, I'm
Stanley.
surprised. Yeah, Stanley. I'm surprised that they haven't put Stanley just, you know, found a way to digitally recreate him and put him in cameos and everything they're still doing. And I heard that they it even thought about doing that by doing some extra film that they didn't use in other things and see if they couldn't paste that together. They didn't end up doing that. But in this one, of course, he's the bartender who's talking about one of the female cast members, and they also had um, a cameo from oh goodness, Garrett Morris,
Ah,
who he was a taxi driver. He
oh
was
my
on
goodness.
Saturday Night Live, and he was the first person to play Ant-Man outside of a cartoon, and it was in a Saturday Night Live sketch where he's Ant-Man.
My goodness.
Yeah.
That is, I remember Garrett Morris when when Saturday Night Live decided to they were pioneers
Mm-hmm.
in helping the in people with hearing disabilities because Garrett Morris was along with Chevy Chase and Chevy Chase in the
Yeah.
news says we are going to provide a service for those of you with hearing disabilities. And Garrett Morris is sitting beside him. We are going to provide a service for
Yeah.
those of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting alternative to subtitles. But I did
They
not
later
catch
expanded
that.
that to have a translation for Emily Latella fans,
Oh,
where he says our top story tonight. She says our flop story tonight. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow. Hello, and how are you today? So,
that's all. Yeah, she was wonderful. She was
yes.
the but I'm not sure if she was on Gilligan's Island ever. I think that was a
No, no,
little
she was never on Gilligan's Island.
the what we were talking about. Oh,
But she could do a pretty good Ruth Buzzy, I'll bet.
I
But
bet she could. Yeah.
who I
I
don't think
bet
was on Gilligan's Island either, so I don't know where I'm going there.
we just steer around. We're in our miniature Hot Wheels car.
That's right.
The what was I? You know, when you think about it, there is this just hit me, the Edgar Wright connection. The way Michael Pena tells stories, to go back in the past, that's got to be Edgar Wright. That just feels like
Yes,
where
yes.
he's telling something that happened, and it's even his voice coming through female characters as he's telling the story. It's just brilliant. I love that part.
I love that effect. I've seen it done in other places. Well, I mean, even in Christmas Story, you know, you have
Ah,
the narrator is sometimes voicing um, the characters, and for instance, Ralphie rarely speaks in the film, but is is voiced by the narrator,
by the narrator, is that Darren McGavin
and they
or
do
no?
that. No, 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 no. Ralphie was the kid.
Ah,
But it was also done a lot in Drunk History. You ever seen that? It's on, I think it's on Comedy Central, where they have Drunk History, where they have history reenacted as someone drunk telling it, and then they have the actors in the recreation mouthing the same words that the narrator is saying. So that they do that there too. So
it feels like
that's just
we're
we
living through
bounce
drunk
around.
history. Only you don't have to be drunk to appreciate it now.
Well, not
That's
us, no.
I would love. I've heard that. I've heard that sounds fantastic. But one character I'm missing the three. They were so much fun. The three heist guys, and how they. But the Michael Pena, T.J. Harris, Tip T.I. Harris,
Yeah.
and then the other one is a guy that kind of a deadpan look. Is that? It's David Demastian, a member of Lang's crew. He worked with
Oh
Lang.
yeah.
This gives you a little backstory. Yeah, he learned how to. Oh, that's right, and that's where he learned how to speak in a character's Russian accent. So yeah, that's right. He's the guy with
Yeah,
the.
there's a story about that when he first meets
Ah,
Paul Rudd. He's in character and he's speaking in his Russian accent, and later on, where it comes up with he's from Kansas City or something like that, and he says in his own voice. Well, he finds out Paul Rudd was in Kansas City or something like that, or came from there, and he says, I'm from there too. And Rudd thought that he was putting on the American accent.
amazing! He did that so well.
Yeah,
That is
he thought
amazing.
he was messing with him by
Yeah,
switching to an American accent and claiming to be from Kansas.
that, that he's fantastic too. I mean, that was they they all had they did just enough, and the van itself becomes kind of a character. Did he accidentally? One of them accidentally hit the horn when the cop, and the cop's pretty good too. I like the the
Yeah,
father, the new husband who's the cop. The husband, where Paul Rudd's wife is, Scott Lang's wife remarries, and the guy's a cop. He hears that horn go off, and that had to be an accident. He leans into the horn at the scene of the crime. Um, that one deleted scene was kind of cool too, because it gives a little bit for the two cops, because there's the cop that's a husband, and another cop
yeah.
we see quite a bit.
Paxton with the daughter's boyfriend, right, or the daughter's
Exactly.
husband. I forget which one.
Right. You're right, Paxton. That's exactly right. And we see a deleted scene lets them talk some after Ant-Man disappears from the jail cell, and they actually get to do some cop type things. They look up the license plate, and we get to
Yeah.
see them. Yeah, how do they? And they're not bad at what they do, but
It fits in with the story, but it slows it down, and that's usually the reason some things get cut. If they find
right.
that it goes a little too far off the track to keep you interested in the main story, kind of like what we do here. We go off the track from the very beginning of this podcast all the way to the end. Somewhere we
Oh,
get to talking about the movie, and what about that Gilligan?
yeah. Well, one person, and this it's funny. One the McSweeney, the author that had written some,
Yeah,
he pointed out, and it's funny how little we've talked about Evangeline Lilly,
yeah,
but it's kind of like this is definitely and you mentioned it earlier. This is a redemption of fathers with both their daughters.
right.
That's the parallel. And this guy points out, he says, why do we need this? What is it in culture that at this point in time in 2015 that somehow he mentions it in this way, that fathers feel like they're under threat, to the point culturally, to the point that movies are designed to allow them to find redemption and find that special relationship. And of course, in the process, what gets sacrificed is the mothers. The mothers are kind of cast aside, like Scott Lang's wife. It's only till the end that she actually starts to feel a little bit like a character. Before the end, she felt kind of mean
Yeah,
to him. And Evangeline Lilly, the Wasp, is like, I mean, you're even through the movie, you're thinking, yeah, why wouldn't she be better equipped to handle this mission than than this guy that is just recruited, and he's kind of an idiot,
yeah,
and,
yeah.
and plays the part. They For a while they thought he should be an idiot savant, kind of have some
Yeah.
special abilities we just don't know about. But then they decided to let him just kind of be an idiot. But he's smart, and it
And they
works. The
make
film
jokes
works.
about that in the course of the film. In that, what's your superpower? I can shrink. That was pretty much it.
Say that again. The last
Well,
part.
he can shrink is a superpower. There's nothing else
Yeah,
that's
that's pretty
special
much it.
about him. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. But they were trying to, yeah, give him some special abilities, but it still works. But man, that line at the end where she gets to finally find a little bit of her character arc, and
yeah,
her appreciation of her character as a woman, or just appreciation of her character as it should be, is when she says, "About damn time." when she
Yeah,
and it
and
really is about
it,
damn
it's
time.
something. It's something. I have a daughter. You have sons only, but I have a daughter,
Right.
and there is this kind of tension. Just how to connect with a daughter, and
Wow.
and
Right.
I found that just like he was, I tried too hard. When you just sit back and let them come to you, that it works.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And
Because
so
I
in
found
terms,
my daughter has, my daughter, she's got a lot of the same interest I do, and it wasn't because uh, I tried to make her like that. She sometimes discovered some of the things in herself and said, "Well, you knew about this," so that's kind of how it works.
but it just came out on her own. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
When she
It
discovered
came.
the yeah.
It eventually, organically, it works, and that special relationship between fathers and daughters, and most girls have problems with their mothers for some reason or other. I don't know exactly why, but that's kind of what I've experienced, and she gets along with very very well with both of us now. But I mean, the thing is that the whole oh, I know, Danny Thomas show kind of thing where Angela Cartwright was always just the daddy's girl kind of thing. I did not experience that as such, but later on when she became truly interesting, she we have a very good relationship as a result.
Oh, y'all do.
Yeah,
Yeah. And she's truly interested in these I hit in terms of interested in some of this stuff as part of my life. You know,
yeah.
the movies and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm batting about 500 out of three
Well,
kids. So, one is fully invested and one baseball and baseball connects us all, but how do you feel this film captures that though, the father daughter relationship
I
and
think
the
it does very well with it. Honestly, I believe they have it just about right. That
right.
that uh, you have to give them some rope and not assume that they need to be protected.
Right. But he was assuming that she needed to be
Yes.
protected, and that was the step too far, and that had helped to poison their relationship. That had really,
Yeah.
because yeah, to the point. I think she was a spy. She never fully became connected with the protege, the evil protege in this film that was working. I'm struggling. The name I should know. Let me scroll up and
Yeah. That was
the bad guy.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Karen Cross.
Darren Cross.
She never became, but obviously she worked with him and and but then began to see the evil of his ways. But even so, what you said exactly right. He
Well,
was
that's
protecting.
similar in Iron Man, where he was very close to Jeff Bridges, who played his father's partner, who turned out to be a pretty bad fellow.
That's exactly right. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Those connections in these series, and I get, and it makes me again look at into how much you see those in the comic books, and how much are those in the comic books, or how much did that, or does this material come out of the movies? Either way, it's just really really good stuff. It's foundational stuff. Fathers and daughters, sons and fathers, fathers and mentors. It's amazing, how all these relationships you can relate to these films in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, and even when they make mistakes that take years to rectify, it's still it becomes all that more meaningful in the film. And it's yeah, this made me want to go back. I have missed a couple of the last Marvel films, and I know they're good. Not all of them are that good, but I've heard really good things about oh, what's the one? It's named after a Thunderbolts. Yeah, named after a
Yeah.
World War II fighter, Thunderbolts. And, I wonder if a Thunderbolt ever flew over Gilligan's Island.
I'll bet you it did.
I bet
And
it.
they were almost able to signal it, and then Gilligan kicked over the the gasoline the professor had made to light the fire with, and they were never able to signal it. Always had something like that. Or
One of
you
my
remember
favorite
the
episodes.
spacecraft fell down, and
Oh,
and
that's the
they,
one. Yeah, they think it's
you know,
Mars.
yeah, and they get dressed up like natives for some other reason, and then the thing comes and activates, and they think it's just a bunch of Aboriginal people on the island that don't pay no attention to them.
Yeah, that's or well, initially in that episode, does NASA when they start to see those images, do they think it's from Mars ever? George, it's a space probe that's supposed to go to Mars or Venus, I think, and it actually lands on Gilligan's Island,
I
right?
don't remember now.
I
There were a
got all
couple.
yeah.
There were a couple of those, and one of them was it was just a returning thing that the camera was still on, and they thought that they was just on an island that had natives on it, rather than
They couldn't get across that
for
they
one
were.
reason or other they were wearing outfits, they decided to do a play that day, and that kind of thing. Oh well, I think we've gone far enough with this.
But there's a great quote that reflects that. I because I was
Okay.
going to say, "Whoa, we
Okay.
returned to Gilligan's Island again. We could be wearing at our welcome." It's and
Okay, let's hear the
and
quote.
the director said, it was a quote I wrote down. It was he said, let's see if I can read my own writing. It's a heist movie. Let's say a heist movie and a comedy should not wear out its welcome. This film should be less than 2 hours. And the director came in right at 2 hours.
I was about to say it was like 157, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah. A heist movie that's a comedy should not wear out its welcome.
Okay. So
Hey,
we
last
will.
question.
Yes.
How did you like the music to this? I forget, it was done by. It's
Oh,
definitely, we were talking about last time that what a great movie we watched, the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, but you're
right.
not going to come out humming that music. But this one, you can come out humming
Yeah.
the music.
I'm certain that they intended for you to notice that, and
Yeah.
I have.
It was definitely hummable. Uh, let's see.
But not as memorable as I'd like it to be, because I'm
I
trying to
know
remember.
we're struggling.
Music was by Christopher Beck.
Exactly.
Jean-Christophe Beck, Canadian television and film
it's
score
got a
composer.
little theme that,
Yeah.
that you can come out. I bought the CD right away. I mean, it's 2015. I went to Barnes and Noble. I knew they had CDs back when they had a lot of CDs, and so
Back when they had a Barnes and Noble there too. That's
that's. I know the one very last thing. They did study ants to get the idea of these. These were real different types of ants. They did exaggerate some of the qualities of the ants, but there really is a crazy ant, and there.
Yeah, I did read some of your research on that had all of the some entomologists that came through and divided all the kind of ants that were used in the film, and it is interesting that they didn't just have generic ant. So
exactly, they did the research to. Yeah, I mean it's a delightful film. Did you like? Do you like both the films? Did you like Ant-Man and the Wasp better, or and the?
I like this one better only because I kind of like the fresher material.
Right.
I get a little weary to see the same thing rehashed. I mean, it was entertaining enough, but did we really need another one? And that's kind of where I was on that.
On that one, yeah.
I mean, it was a perfectly good film. That said,
yeah, it had, to me also, it had because it comes out in relation to Infinity War. I think basically when it came out, Ant-Man and the Wasp came out after the first part of Infinity War, basically when the big snap happened, everybody disappears, half the world is gone, and basically Samuel L. Jackson is punching in his pager desperately to get word to. Later we find out it's Captain Marvel, but it's a very depressing time. It's scary, everybody's gone, and so this film comes out, and you're going, well, this is fun. And then we cut back to the real world. I say the real world, and that ant is by itself. In everybody's gone, and then
the only thing that I think that came from the apocalypse that was really good was WandaVision. And
Ah,
WandaVision, although it's a television series, it's
right.
worth seeing. I recommend that.
100% worth seeing, and it's a great tie-in. That's the you almost have to see that to then watch the next Doctor Strange film.
Pretty much,
You
yeah.
have WandaVision in your back pocket, but it's worth it. It's a terrific. Really, the series is almost better than the film, but the film is good, and it was worth. And that's
Yeah.
funny, that we'll back off here, but we're talking about Auteur's Sam Raimi ends up directing that Doctor Strange film, and
Yes.
within the Marvel universe that's the most horrific film. Sam Raimi with his horror vibes. That's definitely the most horrific film in the Marvel universe, but it works. And I'm glad
Yeah.
they let Sam Raimi kind of be Sam Raimi some.
Okay.
But anyway,
Well, you're going to miss your appointment if we don't
okay, I
wrap
gotta.
this up. So
It's just too much fun.
it is too much fun. But we'll be. What are we going to do next week? Did we say that what we were going to do next
We
week?
did, and it came from out. No, we're doing. Are we doing it? It came from outer space. No, wait a
I
minute.
think
We're doing the one
I
with
think
Ray Bradbury.
we talked about that. Yeah, I think it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It came from outer space, written
Yeah,
by
let's
Ray
do that.
Bradbury. That's
Let's
it.
do that. There we go. There we go. Okay, that's next week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. We'll talk to you next week. And thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next week. Don't go far.